welcome to another episode of the Sore Losers Show. I'm Damo Kennedy. This is my wonderful track-suited up co-host Andreas Tim, and today we're both, right? Really stoked to say we've got a very special guest on the show. He's a fixture in Australian skateboarding, a jack of all trades, if you will, within the skateboard industry, Mr. Tom Flaherty. VB Tom. What else? Flaz. Just Flaz.
Flaz.
The world knows him as Flaz. Welcome, Flaz. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Damo. And g'day, Andreas. Nice to see you, mate. And, thanks for having me on, guys.
Love you, Flaz.
Yeah, look, no worries. It's absolutely our pleasure. Stoked to have you here. Glad to have a conversation with you in the week or so prior to this, and catch up a little bit and see how you're going. And I think we just started off with the way I've started it off with most people is, how did you start skateboarding? How did you find skateboarding? How did it find you?
Well, I'm.
And where were you at the time?
I was born in Werribee in Victoria and raised in Hoppers Crossing. But I was out at a farm at my grandparents' one Christmas in I think it was 1977, Christmas 97, 77, sorry. And me and my brother were about a year apart, and I've got a younger cousin who's a year younger than him, and my cousin got a plastic skateboard and me and my brother got one to share, and that was on the farm. So I was probably like 6 years old at the time, and that was just something that we used as a toy. It was didn't really understand what the skateboard was then, I guess, and we just belly boarded and knee boarded, did whatever we could. And it was something that was put in the closet. And then when we were going to go visit the cousin, he had a footpath at his place. So I was like, oh, let's take the skateboard and play on that, And so that, went on for a little while. And then I do clearly remember watching Charlie's Angels and seeing Stacey Peralta on the Charlie's Angels show. And I think Wonder Woman had a skateboard. And just seeing those things on television made me go, wow, what's that? I want to try that. And then, but it was, I know, leading into Christmas 1985, I was working with my dad, saving up all the money I had, and I bought myself a Veriflex. And, 3 days before Christmas, I got that Veriflex, and I skated it every day, like then on, and didn't even care what came for Christmas that year because all I cared about was riding that skateboard. Yeah.
Was it a Losi model by any chance?
No. It was a very basic Veriflex Splash.
Oh, I remember that board.
So how did you know about Veriflex and stuff when you growing up on a farm? How did that go for you? Because you said you grew up on a farm, and so how were you exposed to skateboarding?
No. We were at the farm for Christmas when we got those first skateboards. But I grew up in the suburbs of Werribee, a place called Hoppers Crossing.
Okay, so you just were out at Christmas, out with the family, and that's when you got your skateboards.
Yes.
Okay.
That's when I got the first plastic board. It was that was my introduction to what is this thing, And but when I got serious about wanting to ride a skateboard was 85, and it was in a bicycle shop. And at that stage, my uncle was really big on long distance, road racing and things like that. And he was trying to get me and my brother into riding our bikes. And I remember being in the bicycle shop with him one day and seeing skateboards on the wall. And I was like, I want one of them.
And all over from there, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that was it. I probably spent the next 2 years just riding in the driveway and, in my own little world, not realizing that there was a big wide world of skateboarding out there.
So when did you discover that? When did you come across other like-minded people, like people who influenced you in those early years and so on? And who did you start skating with?
So at first it was just me and my brother for a little while, but then there was other kids in the area that obviously skated, and at high school I got to meet them, and we ended up getting a public ramp built in the area, and but it seemed like a lot of the kids that were already skating at that time just disappeared, and it was like, I don't know, I was like the only one at the ramp. But then there was a lot of young kids that started coming up, so people my own age just disappeared, and then other kids came into it. So there's a few local kids skating at the ramp. Probably the main one that's still skated for a long time with me is Lincoln Scott. I used to skate with Lincoln a fair bit back in the day, and from there we actually started to travel and skate different areas and hook up with different people. So, but early on, when I learnt about all the big wide world of skateboarding through magazines and stuff, I definitely looked up to guys like Johnny McGrath and Sack and Jason Ellis. I loved Jason's style. Gary Valentine, Dom Kekic. Dom actually did the opening demo at the Werribee ramp, and that was, so he was a huge influence, I guess. Being a younger kid than myself, and it's like, wow, I've got a lot to work on to get as good as him. You know what I mean? So,
Was he on? Was he already on PAL after that? I think it was the '89 demo.
or it was about Christmas '88 when the ramp in Werribee was opened, and he was riding Tony Hawk board then. So I'm pretty sure he was on that power flow from JHS by then. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Dom was always in my mind as far as looking at skateboarding, like vertical skateboarding. I didn't really relate to that because I didn't have access to vertical ramps. So, but Dom in my mind just stood out, like just such a little kid and just a powerhouse, and the amount of tricks he had back then, and just always amazed me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very talented from young age, right? Like he was very.
Yeah, I think he was like 11 years old or something like that when he started getting hooked up by JHS, and yeah, he was spinning fives and stuff like that, like which is quite normal for kids these days. I wonder what you think about like the progression of skateboarding in that way. Like Dom was a standout kind of kid, kind of like Blake Convey was a standout kind of kid,
Yeah.
of that age. And I wonder, you look at skateboarding now and what you think of how far it's come as far as the progression of very young skateboarders able to make things that were unthinkable, 20, 30 years ago.
It's that collective consciousness, isn't, I feel like, where, I mean, once the barriers are broken down, that next generation just knows and believes they can do it. Like for us at the time, the McTwist was like a trick that we had to work hard at, and it was unattainable, really. And for Dom, as a little kid, to do it back then, that's what made Dom so special, I guess. That he just had the knack. Like I think he was the second person in the world to ever land the 720.
Wow.
I remember seeing him at Paran do three in a row, like 720, air to fakie, 720, air to fakie, 720.
Sick.
We see it with the 900, right? Everyone was battling for 10 or 12 years to try and land that trick. When then Tony finally made it, and it didn't take long for Giorgio to land one, and then Sandro landed one less than 12 hours later. And then from then it's like kids learn to spin fives. It's like, well, okay, now I'm going for a 900. Like.
And that
Yeah.
was before the exposure, right? Before all that YouTube, before everything. Now everything is on tap. You like look at this 24/7. If you want to see one in slow motion, you can pick the angle.
Exactly,
You
yeah.
can pick multiple angles and look at them. Back then, that was not really obtainable. You sometimes seen like something in a magazine, and that was often very off in terms of like a trick tip or something. Like sometimes those pictures they were just whatever they're like had going, right?
Just
Like
whatever.
it's pretty funny actually.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah, you're dead right, Andreas. Like I remember so many tricks that I tried to learn, and I had to, look at magazine pictures and try and work out in my head how they got into that position. It's just the videos has changed everything.
Yeah, like those early Bones Brigade videos, like Bones Brigade video show. I think the first one I actually watched was Future Primitive, and then went back to watch Bones Brigade video show. But I think the standout was Lance, right, from those videos and making everything seem so. People have said it before 100 times, making things look accessible. Like, and as Lance called it, just goofing around,
all terrain,
Ab-
slappy, backyard pool, vert ramp, everything,
yeah,
rooftop, everything.
agreed.
For me, I didn't think of myself as a vert skater or a street skater or a mini ramp skater or anything like that back then. I just rode a skateboard, and so Lance definitely had that. It just came across that he was having so much fun doing what he was doing. That's ultimately what we're looking for when we ride a skateboard, isn't it? It's the freedom to have fun.
And going back to what I think Lance said it in the Bones Brigade autobiography, and he says like it's staying as immature as possible for as long as possible, kind of thing. And I think for myself, that's what I'm chasing. I know this guy is. He's actually regressing.
Like a little bit.
Yeah.
From the dress code, definitely.
Yeah, he'll be in the womb by next week.
Yeah.
So speaking of here's the thing I really remember, and this is how I remember meeting you for the first time, was you were VB man, product placement. You were VB man, and I was wondering how the fuck did that come about? Like, how did you go from like I'm just skating to just wearing full VB garb, drinking VB all the time? And sub question, were you sponsored by Carlton for that? Like sponsored by VB properly, or was that just your thing?
All right. So how that happened and how it started was for my 21st birthday, my brother gave me a VB t-shirt and my uncle gave me a VB hat and VB socks. And it just so happened that the next weekend, Surf Dive and Ski were having a comp, and at that, 21, so this is 94. I was trying to enter as many comps as I could, get myself out there, skate as much as possible, and it was a street comp or whatever. And so I was like, I was going to dress up in all my VB gear and go skate the comp. And I remember the guy on the mic just like, it's the VB dude, we got Tom back for another round. VB dude. And I was like, you know what? Everyone's looking for an angle to stand out, and so I think I found my niche. We know that beer drinking is such a big thing in the Australian culture, and it was just something that I sort of latched onto. And look, admittedly, I didn't mind a VB back then, and so yeah, I wore the gear, and it just became a thing where friends and family would buy me VB stuff like, Tom's birthday's coming up. What do we get him? We'll get him a VB shirt. And so it became my wardrobe, and then it was probably
That'd suck.
and then later on,
like just knowing you're only going to get VB stuff.
But it was interesting for me to find out all the cool different shirts they found, But I guess it was my way of standing out in the skateboard crowd for a little while, and but I ended up working for Sue Kirk at the Melbourne show. They built a ramp, and she got me to help uh, pull the ramp down and put it back up for demos and things like that. And I just got involved as much as I could because I had this portable vert ramp, and so I'd be skating there all the time. And so she was like, "What's the deal with you and CUB?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, everyone knows you as the VB man. You're always wearing it when you're skating. Like, what do they give you?" And I said, "They don't give me nothing. I don't even know if they know I exist." And so Sue's like, "Oh, let me see about that." And so she was obviously through the Melbourne Showgrounds. She was in contact with the marketing department of CUB, and so she wrote a letter to them, and they actually said for me to submit any sort of magazine coverage and stuff that I'd had, and I sent it through, and then a massive box showed up at my house. Um, so yeah, I had and it was like that box was that full of stuff. I had enough gear for a whole year, no worries. And then the next year, like almost to the day, another box rocked up the year after, and I thought this is pretty cool. They must be right into this. And so I wrote them a letter asking if they could send me some travel money, and then they wrote me a letter back saying, "We love what you do. We love the imagery of who you are and what you stand for and whatever in skateboarding, but we cannot be seen to be officially sponsoring someone that is deemed a youth market." And then the boxes stopped.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So they're sending you stuff, but they're in denial that they're actually sending you stuff.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. Like we can't. Like no, it's just under the table flow. We love you.
We're happy to send you some clothes. But don't ask for anything else.
Yeah. Just don't mention it to anybody. Yeah.
The first time I seen you skate, I was so mind blown. Like fully as VB Tom. Like that's how I've been introduced to you. Like I think it would have been maybe the second Bowl-a-Rama potentially or something when you guys came up from Victoria. Like
Yeah, the second one was the first one I came.
yeah, that's when I like seen you for the first time and potentially met you back then. I think was it the one we went down to the full pipe after with the vans with the checkered like combi, like a checkered combi VW. Like was it that year or the year after maybe?
That was a few years in. Yeah,
Yeah, like
that was
so,
2007, Andreas, because Daniel Cardoni was here with us, I think. Yeah.
that's right. I think he was down there as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's right.
So
And I look, I remember the MC like was basically saying, yeah, this is VB Tom is from Victoria, basically giving the rundown, and I'm like mind blown. I come from Germany. I'm like, huh, what's
did you
going on in Australia? And then like there was like you were my like proto Australian on a skateboard when I first came to Australia. I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
did you ever think about corrupting it and maybe like instead of bitter under here, like Flaz or something like Victoria Flaz and changing that to an F?
That must have been done.
I know. I remember Wade Burkett had the WB as a graphic on. I think it was on Time.
Right.
His graphic was the VB, but it was WB. Yeah,
Right.
Wade Burkett. But yeah, look, I think back then skateboarding and beer, even now, go hand in hand. Like we've got VB over here. They've got Paps Blue Ribbon in the States.
Fireball is sponsoring skateboarders. That's like reality. Like Newtowner
that's true.
is sponsoring skateboard events.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
it's just sort of what it is now. Now it's been like that in Europe, for example, for a long time like that. Jägermeister and all other things sponsored events for like a long time.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you is about, okay, so we're coming on 20 years this year, is it, that you built Ring of Fire in Melbourne?
Yeah, yep.
That pay to play skate park at the amusement center, I want to call it, but it's like it's pinball machines and it's crazy. If nobody's ever gone there, first of all, I'll just share my experience walking in there a couple of years ago. I walk into this place and it's the first time I've ever been there, and there's like discarded broken pinball machines like just cluttering part of this room, and you walk up to this dodgy counter and you can see like go-karts and like just all sorts of chaos going on, like just danger everywhere, like smashed screens on video games and stuff. And I walk up to the guy and he's behind the counter, and I'm like, we're here to skate the park. And I was with P-Rad at the time. We're here to skate the park. And he's like, and I could tell he wanted nothing to do with it. He didn't even walk us up there. It's upstairs, like I think 3 or 2 levels upstairs is the first part of it. And then, yeah, you go up another level.
That's what I found most amazing, that it was like...
All he does is unlock the door and go, there you go. And we're the only ones there. Like, it was in quite a bad state. But yeah, that leads me to, that's just the setup for what Ring of Fire is like. So tell me about building that. How did that come about? Like, did they approach you? Did you approach them? Or what's the story?
So yeah, they approached me. The people that run that go-kart center are sort of friends of the family, and my brother plays a lot of inline and ice hockey, and their oldest son was into ice hockey and stuff as well. And so I'd played hockey with Dan, and Daniel Truen, his name was. Daniel rang me up one day and said, look, I've got this space at the go-kart center that's not being used. I want to do something skate. I want to build some skate ramps and stuff up there. And so me and my cousin Dingo went up there, and we met up with Dan, and we had a look around the space, and he sort of said, what do you think? And I said, look, I want to build a bowl. I've got an idea for a bowl that I'd love to build. If you're willing to fund it, I'll build it for you because I want to do it, And he's like, yeah, cool. And so, yeah, that's sort of how it all happened. And I got all my mates involved, and I was there pretty much every night after work doing 2 or 3 hours prep throughout the week, so that on the weekends when all my mates came, I had work ready for them to do. And I think it took us nearly 4 months to smash that out and build that bowl.
The whole park or just the bowl?
Just the bowl. The bowl came first.
Yeah, right.
We built the bowl first, and then the following year was the World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
And then once I worked on the World Cup with Chad Ford and Steve Gourlay.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a crew of us. Cons was in there with me, and a few other guys from Sydney. And we built all the ramps in a warehouse in Port Melbourne for the World Cup at Rod Laver Arena. And after a couple of years of using those wooden ramps, they ended up hiring ARD ramps to use for the World Cup. And so those wooden ramps were not being used anymore. And I remember Steve Gourlay rang me and said, Flaz, come and grab what you want if you want to, use anything at the Ring of Fire. And so, yeah, the whatever we built downstairs, that all came from all the old ramps from the World Cup, yeah.
And so you mentioned World Cup. How many ramps did you build for World Cup? Was it like 2 years in a row or 3 years in a row?
I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been 3 years in a row we used that wooden course. And the first year was the initial build. We went hard, and then the next 2 years, it was more we'd get in there and we'd remodel it and just, use a lot of the components, but shuffle it around and build new things. So the build wasn't as intense for the next 2 years. But and then after 2 years of moving that stuff in and out and putting it in storage again, and you could tell it was wearing out because they were all wooden frames and stuff like that. So I guess they decided to move on and go with the Shanos's ARD ramps at the time after that.
I guess it happens like that a bit though. But so that leads me into after that. So that's 20 years ago. And then the park.
Yeah.
In Geelong. That was all you, right? Like you did all the construction there?
I love that ramp. Oh, I love that ramp.
Yeah, me, Reese, and Dean.
Flaz, do you mean Dean Brooks?
Yeah, that's it. Brooksy. Yeah, me, Reese, and Dean Brooks. We built the park together. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, Dean.
But anyway, what happened there was Jimmy from Torquay, Jimmy Lareco, and Trevor and Shawnee, and I think Haswell, we're all looking. Jimmy had proposed, like, let's get a warehouse and build a vert ramp somewhere, and then Trevor met this couple that were looking at building an indoor skate park. So we ended up teaming up with them, and we all got together and we sussed out, found a building, and Jimmy paid for the vert ramp, and I was working on that vert ramp every night with Jimmy, and then working during the day with Reese and Dean, building the whole park. So yeah, that went on the build was nearly, I think, 5 to 6 months, to fully complete. And but yeah, that was probably one of my proudest things, to build that vert ramp there at the park.
Ooh. Give us some dimensions. It's huge. Like, for people that don't know, it's like really wide, right?
Good point.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's 90 feet wide in total. It's an 11-foot tranny with 2 foot of vert. What else we got there? We've got a 15-foot offset quarter pipe that's 20 feet wide, set on a 7-degree angle. Opposite that, there is a 15-degree elbow.
That's my spot.
And then in the other corner, it's got a massive flat bank that goes to 16 foot high with some pool coping on the top, like a Jersey barrier. And then opposite that, there's a kicker ramp that's 11 foot high, 10 foot tranny, 1 foot of vert, and it's built on I can't remember the actual angle, but it's a steep angle that shoots you onto the ramp it's like the ramp's built on a corkscrew. So when you ride up it shoots you back onto the main ramp. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not my style. Not my style. I like car parks and curbs, mate.
I love it. No, I love it. Skates well, like, I love it.
I'd go there and probably just look at it, take some photos because it'd be a nice aesthetic. Yeah, for the gram, just photos for the gram, But so you mentioned that Trev was involved in that, which leads me into because of Thieve Trucks, basically. You roll within Thieve Trucks. Was that kind of coming about at the same time? And for people that don't know, if you could explain how Thieve Trucks came about and what your role was within it.
Well, what I understand is Trev was riding for Armadillo, and they were looking at getting more involved within skate stuff rather than just doing because Armadillo, I think, was like wallets, belts, that sort of stuff. And the family that were involved with Armadillo had a background in titanium golf clubs. And so that's sort of how the whole Thieve Truck thing came into it. And Trev got involved with them. And so when the park opened up, we had Trev had an office around the back of the park, and he eventually sort of, after the park was built, Trev offered me a bit of a position there, helping out in the warehouse, pack boxes and stuff, and work on some videos. Got my background with FSBS and things like that. I've edited videos and skate videos and stuff before, so got in there and worked with him on just doing little clips for Instagram and stuff like that, and laying out ads, and had a crack at trying to do sales, which was not my gig at all. But just helping out at Thieve Trucks with whatever I could. And Trev gave me a position of being an Australian team manager for a while there, and I sort of tried my best to look after the talent that I thought, especially on the vert side of things. Steve McGuinness looked after more the street side of things, where I was more looking after the vert side of it. And we had Lukey Russell, Jacob Robinson, Izzy Mutu. There was a whole bunch of people that we had riding for Thieve.
Yeah, I remember there was a bit of controversy, and Thieve Trucks, the titanium aspect versus pool coping.
Yeah.
Did anybody actually say to you not good, or just because of the hardness of the trucks? And
I personally never heard anything. No one ever spoke to me about that at all. But I have heard that it was an issue for some people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually Grosso brought it up, just saying that I'm not entirely sure. I can't say that 100%, I should say.
Jimmy skated them in Bondi regularly and stuff, and there's they definitely behave differently. There's sparks coming off them and stuff, and it smelled like really full on,
It smells like a car wreck.
It's very exciting. It also sounded a lot different. Well, Jimmy makes everything work, so I don't know. I can't judge that personally, but I know they were like, whoa, it's exciting to watch. It's like something's going on.
Yeah. And so at one stage, I remember, so Thieve internationally, you mentioned that so you were the Australian team manager. So I guess you didn't have much to do with the international side of things. But at one stage, I remember everybody, like Tony Hawk was on Thieves, if I'm not mistaken, right? For a second there.
Yeah.
It seemed like everybody. Was it Rob Larifus? Was Larifus Thieves as well?
I believe so, yeah.
Look, we got to give Tony a shout out. Tony got to get a shout out because he's always going for the underdog companies. He's always supporting everybody's gig. He's kind of like that a little bit, with the smaller wheel companies and everything. He doesn't need to do that,
Smaller wheel companies like Bones and,
No, certain Searchies and stuff, the Type S's. And,
okay,
he
the Type
always
S.
does that, and also the shoes, he always, changes around. He doesn't need to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, true. I think
That's what I'm saying. He always kind of, which he doesn't need to ride for Thieve. Everybody's wants Tony Hawk, but he's still, he's, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Was Trev stoked when Tony was riding?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think by what I understand, it was a big deal for them to get Tony on, and it was part of the reason why they were able to break into the international market the way they did. I wasn't involved at that time, but when that happened, that was huge for them. You know what I mean? They, getting Tony on, really helped to nail down the distribution and things like that in the States, and really push the product worldwide. Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine it like that. Attaching the name Tony Hawk to anything is basically you're guaranteed to really
You
launch it.
legitimize it a little bit, you know.
Well,
like
yeah.
if Tony endorses it, it's usually like,
Agreed.
yeah. So
Agreed.
that's
And so what happened with Thieve at the end of the day? Like, yeah, is it still a Thieve truck still operating or?
They are still operating, but all the people that I know that were involved are no longer there. They've sort of basically sacked everybody, and I'm not 100% sure who is actually running it anymore.
Yeah, right. So was it one of those things where the company was sold to a larger,
Well,
larger company?
yeah, there was always investors involved, and that backed it, and they ultimately owned the product, and it was yeah, they just moved on. I guess they decided they could do it themselves or something like that. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
right.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's always strange when something like that happens. Like I've seen it really recently with Dwindle distribution and how Toy Machine basically collapsed, Madness collapsed, like all these companies collapsing when a larger company like a sporting goods company buys a skateboard distribution company or a small skate company thinking they can build it big, which is going to lead me into asking you about Device Skateboards, your company, like how that came about. Is it still going? Is like what's happening with Device? What happened with Device? Where was that conceived and how did it come about?
Well, but it goes right back to when I was starting to skate, and my background as a cabinet maker and being a woodworker, and always being interested in how things are built and made. Always had this idea of making my own skateboards. I want to be able to try and work this out and do it. And I've experimented. In the early '90s, I was trying to make my own boards, and then eventually I found a guy in Melbourne who was pressing decks, and I got decks through him and just put my own graphics and stuff on them and ran it for a while. And then I got serious about it. I guess in '97 I actually registered the name, and sort of it was more very underground type company where I'd get probably say 50 decks at a time, and I'd sell them to my friends and out the back of my car. Really, it was hard to get shops interested at that stage. I guess in the late '90s they were more worried about the bigger brands and things like that. And then I sort of ran it that way for quite a few years, and then the guy I used to get my decks from, he was closing up shop, and he ended up selling me his press, and so now I've got access to make my own boards, and I started pressing my own decks for myself and friends and things like that. And through working with Trev at Thieve, I was able to see how the market worked and how the industry worked better, and realised that I could actually probably have a go at really trying to push Device as a company, and but it came very apparent to me very quickly that I couldn't actually produce the decks here because the amount of money I had to spend on veneers and glue and my time to make the boards, it couldn't compete with the overseas product. And so through with Surplus and Steve and Trev at Surplus doing Thieve, they had other brands as well, and they were bringing in decks from China, and I was able to look at all the different type of boards they were getting in, and there was one manufacturer that I really liked, and I went with that, and I really pushed Device for about I'd say 5 to 6 years. Got a hold of an old skate friend from Werribee who was a tattoo artist to do graphics for me, and I did some of my own graphics. I created the Luke Foster board. I did the Jaffa board. What else did we do? You know, there was this a Wild West series, and then a Wildcats, rock and roll Wildcats series. They were all tattoo art from my friend. And then we did a model for Sack, and that was drawn by a friend of Sack's.
I was going to ask how Sax Graphic came about and who drew it and who came up with the concept. Like we're talking about the Incredible Hulk model. Is that the one?
Yeah. So he
I know it was his idea because the Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently Sack's his favorite cartoon character as a kid was the Hulk, and Sack's got that angry energy about him, like a guy who's lost his cool, like the Hulk. And so, Mike Basil, an artist from Adelaide, skater artist, he drew the graphic for him, and it was good. It was good fun doing all that stuff. The sponsored guys like Nick Chris, Luke Russell, Rob Lorifus was on the team at one stage.
Yeah, of course.
Tuss, we did a board for Tuss. I'm just trying to think who else there was a big team. I had a big team there for a while, and supporting those guys, is my main passion. Really was to make sure that they had what they needed to help promote the product, and unfortunately, it got to a point where I was putting all of my hard earned into device to make it work, and I wasn't seeing much in sales, and it just got to a point where it wasn't even covering for itself. That's all I needed it to do. I just needed it to pay for itself, and so, but I was putting all of my money and effort into it, and nothing was coming in at all for a little while there. And this was probably late, 2017, early 2018, and I had to write a letter to all the guys and just say that, look, I've got to pull the plug on this because I need to work on myself. It was one of those moments where I really realised that I'm putting all this energy into this thing and it's not getting anywhere, and it's time for Tom to look after Tom, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Was that? Do you think were you being stocked in many Australian stores at that stage? Were you in just basically back? Were stores backing you, like skate shops and stuff like that?
So the Geelong skate shop would buy boards. Just trying to think who else we had. I think Russell Grundy, he was stocking a few device boards. I'm trying to remember. Shed 9. There was a few shops that would buy boards every so often, but not a lot. OCD, Shay at OCD. I built the ramp for them there as well. But yeah, he'd support me a little bit as well, and I ended up setting up an online thing so people could buy them directly off me, and just the sale. I'd sell a few here and there, and the main times there was good sales is when I'd come out with a new graphic, and everyone would be like, "Oh yeah, cool," and that would go pretty quick for a little while, and then the interest would just wane again, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I experienced a similar thing personally through. I started making curb wax, just as an experimental thing. I just wanted to make my own wax, basically, and then I thought, let's see if anybody's interested in it. It happened to be around COVID, so it kind of blew up, and thank you to Ty Colling for making that possible, because when he was doing his as a rep going to stores, he was taking 100 blocks with him and selling them through stores and stuff. So I was really fortunate to have Ty on my side, and also the perfect storm factor of COVID and nobody being able to get any products from the States, basically. Stores were running out of everything. And I wanted to ask you if you were still in business at the beginning of COVID, because I think that if you were, that could have been like a real peak, you know?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I pulled the pin in 2018. Um, yeah, I missed the COVID uh, rush that apparently was seen in the skate industry there for a little while.
It's weird though, right? That like people who wouldn't ordinarily, as you've proven, necessarily support an Australian made or owned product. When COVID came around and they couldn't get US products, they were all about it. So I can't imagine what would have happened to Device as far as your sales went. Like, I imagine you wouldn't have been able to keep up with demand during COVID, because I couldn't keep up with demand just making blocks of wax, you know. Yeah,
People were panic buying product.
yeah, that's it. Like
There was that sort of thing. You can't get something, so you need a backup. Even
it was the end of the world, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So with device folding, and you mentioned that you needed to look after Tom. Like, once you decided you couldn't, it was non-sustainable device. Um, what what happened there? Like, as far as looking after yourself goes.
Yeah, well, at that time I was heavily overweight and just probably eating really poor diet. Um, early 2019, I went on a hoon run with Andrew Curry. He was living with me at the time, and we did a hoon run down the southwest coast of Victoria into South Australia. And I remember getting home from that trip and not being able to, being disappointed in myself for not skating more on that trip. And I realised that I had to do something about my health. And so that led me on a journey to try and discover what I could to lose the weight. And I sort of went down a path of different eating, and ultimately I came to the point where I realised that the best diet is fruit. And so for probably in 2020 is when I actually got to the point where I got down to 72 kilos in late 2020. So I lost 48 kilos in about a year and a half, 18 months.
I did that once. My when I did that, it was called getting divorced. But yeah, yeah. Please keep going.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, ultimately, I've switched to basically a frugivore diet, and so my diet now consists of raw fruit and salads mostly. So, but right now I'm actually 6 days into a juice fast. So I'm doing a cleanse right now, and I've done a couple of these now. Only short. I've only ever done 6 days before, so I'm actually hoping to push to 40 days this time. So I'm going to try and break my record. And
Whoa,
so
40 days.
yeah. And this is I mean, what I understand is that we eat regular meals all day long, and this is part of how the system is designed to I don't know, keep your body busy. You know what I mean? And this is to get true health, we should actually fast every now and then. You know what I mean? Give the body a break and give it time to clean out. So by having a juice fast, I'm putting plenty of liquid through my body to hydrate it, and it gives the organs a chance to clean out. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. I did something pretty close to that at sort of the beginning of this year, where I was a friend of mine sent me basically a 3 day. It was only a 3 day thing that I did. So it was a 3 day, or maybe it was a 5 day. Either way, it was a short period of time, and it was mostly juices with one meal which was vegetable based, legumes in there, that sort of stuff. And at the end of that period, I was like feeling so good comparatively to how I was feeling at the end of the year prior, at the end of last year. And I found myself like taking on all sorts of things just to back it up. Basically, so I started meditating. I started looking into Buddhism, into like just a bit of a spiritual growth. And I was wondering if like it's a similar path for yourself.
Yeah, definitely, Damo. Like that's part of, I guess, my spiritual awakening that I would say that I had in 2020, because I started making these changes in my diet in 2019, and that by doing that, I saw changes within my body. My consciousness cleared up. Like you clean up your diet, your body functions better, and therefore your brain works better. And through COVID, I just did a lot of YouTube diving and discovery of spiritual information through a few different people that have really opened my eyes to, like you're saying, meditation is so important, and, spending time in nature. Like today, what I do every day is I walk, around the property where I'm staying, and I, do alternate nostril breathing, which is very important for balancing the energies within our bodies. And, just being consciously mindful of your thoughts, and it's been a huge difference for me. Like I feel so much more in control of my life. Just having that awareness that there is conscious energy all around us, that's part of the creation of this earth, and we're all part of it. And it all starts with your food. I feel, like by cleaning up your diet is how you awaken spiritually. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, I definitely think Captain Porkroll over here could do with this information, yeah. But I also found that the next time I went skating, so it was like a couple of weeks, I think it was about 10 days after New Year's, and I also at the same time I was like, I'm going to take a break from booze. So I wasn't drinking. I was eating really well. I was meditating. I was doing all this stuff. And the next time I went skating, I just felt so much more involved in the moment. Like it's really hard to describe, actually. It just felt really natural. Like I wasn't fighting anything, like I just connected with skateboarding all over again, like when I was a kid again. It felt like I was at at the first time I went to Bowl-a-Rama all over again. And yeah, I know absolutely what you're talking about. Which actually, speaking of Bowl-a-Rama, let's touch on this for a second. So you judged Bowl-a-Rama, the ABCs. What else did you judge? Oh, the Soul Bowl at the
Manly.
Yeah, the Manly Soul Bowl. So how did you start judging? How did you get thrown into that basket? Because like I said at the beginning, jack of all trades within skateboarding here. We've gone like building skate parks. We've gone owning a skate company, being team manager, working in the editing. We've gone everywhere, and now
Sales.
yeah, sales. And here's another layer of the onion, of the Flaz onion. Judging contest. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I was part of a a group in Werribee. We called ourselves the Werribee Skateboard Committee, and we used to organise competitions because there was just nothing happening in skateboarding, and so we'd have to do it all ourselves. And I had a little bit of experience judging through that back in the day, but when Bowl-a-Rama started, I purely was only wanting to be there as a spectator. I just, I'd met Sasha from the World Cups. He'd been one of the head judges at World Cup, and so I had a relationship with him and Chad Ford. And I'd come up, and if they had room to put me in the pub and give me accommodation, they'd help me out some way or another. Or sometimes I'd even just park the van and sleep in my car, or set me tent up out the back of the Beach Road Hotel and sleep in that. But one year I was heading up to Sasha's room, and I remember knocking on the door to, just to catch up with everyone in the evening. It had been, I think it was the Friday night before the comp, and so everyone's winding down from the big session that beforehand. And I knock on the door, and Dave Duncan opens the door, and all I remember Dave's going, "There's your judge," and I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" Anyway, so apparently what it was is Danny Van was asking Sasha if he could skate in Masters rather than judge, because Danny was meant to be judging. And so Sasha said, "Look, I don't care, but you've got to get someone to fill your place." And so Danny ended up, talking to me and asking me, like, "Hey, are you cool with this, Flaz? I'll sling you a bit of money, and you can judge the Masters for me, and then I'll come back and judge the rest of the day. But I need
Classic Danny Van.
I need you to do Masters so I can skate." And I was like, "Well, if I'm only doing Masters, that's okay. I'll do that. I'll help you out, Anyway, I remember getting there nice and early and being there for the Masters. They were the first ones up, and Danny, I think he may have even been in the first heat. I'm not sure. And I think by the time the Masters finals were on, or I'm not sure, or maybe the last heat of the Masters, I got a tug of my T-shirt up on the scaffold, and I look around, and there's Danny with a can in his hand. He's like, "Hey, Flaz, you reckon you're right to judge the whole day?" And so that was it. I mean, I ended up judging the whole day, and Sasha said he was super stoked with what I did, and he kept emailing me every year after that, like, "I need you on the team. I need you on the judging team." So, and it became my way of being at Bowl-a-Rama because, without that, the judging gave me a hotel room and a bit of travel money to get there. So, yeah, it was awesome. And I love doing the whole three of the comps too. It was great.
You were on the actual artwork.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
There was one year that it had all the faces of Bowl-a-Rama and Steve Cab and everybody like that.
Sergi, everybody
And
was
Flaz
on
was
there.
there. Yeah,
Flaz was in the center.
Yeah,
In the center.
And that artwork was taken from the 1 year that I didn't have a beard.
That's unfortunate because you go, "Look, that's me."
It's like, "Nah, that can't be you. That can't be you."
That doesn't look like a Lord of the Rings character.
No.
I got that T-shirt hanging up in my room up there.
Yeah, I got T-shirt. I got 2 T-shirts, I believe, still with that artwork. I love it.
So, wow, it's amazing that you just, like within skateboarding, you just kind of fall into stuff, and it's how it's just so weird to me that like as just a collective, everybody's got something that they can contribute to, whether it be the industry or like park building or something like that. Like we spoke about Shane Serena a little earlier, as far as when he was with ARD. And it's like, I work for Shane. Andreas has worked for Shane like
I worked
2,
for
3
Shane.
times now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
times I worked
It's
for Shane.
and it's just that awesome community that I find, and like just the synergy is just. I'm just stoked on it
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And I wonder where your stoke level is at the moment, man. Like where are we going? Is you bringing device back? What's going to happen?
What's the skating? We want to know what the skating.
Oh yeah,
is.
yeah.
You know,
Have you
like,
skated lately?
I actually have been skating lately. With COVID, I guess I had to move out from where I was living, and pretty much had no money for a while there, and so I was sort of stuck. Not having. My passion's vert, and I just want to ride vert, and so there's no vert ramps around where I'm living at the moment. But I'm actually really making the effort to skate, and me and Jaffa have been skating vert quite regularly now for probably the last 12 weeks, and I'm having a lot of fun. After losing all that weight, my body works so much better now, and I'm enjoying my skating again more than ever. It's been awesome. Just getting back on the vert and skating as often as I can, at least once a week, and it's been great, man. I'm loving it. As far as device coming back,
that's awesome.
cheers, Andreas. Yeah, I'm loving it, mate. And as far as device coming back, I'll never say never, but no plans right now.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear that. Yeah, I think that's a skater thing. Never say never. I said at one stage, look, Andreas is never going to wear like the worst colored tracksuit to try and record a video on, but never say never. And so, what are you looking forward to in the future, Flaz? Like more skating? You're going to get around? Like,
At the moment, just I'm enjoying my spiritual journey, getting into meditation, and my food journey of cleaning up my diet. I'm really enjoying that process, and for me, that's one of my main focus right now is you know dealing with my spiritual connection and working on that as much as possible, and still skating. I love the vert. I love skating vert. Um, my my body is more suited to bailing onto my knees than jumping downstairs. So I'm quite happy to say that I could probably skate vert for another 20 years. Um, so we'll see how we go.
I've been at John Gray's. Johnny Gray got like a freaking vert ramp in his backyard now. Like he's close to 60. He's not far off. Johnny Gray, or did he turn already? Do you know?
60?
Johnny Gray?
I don't know. I don't want to talk about someone's age. I don't. I don't want to claim that. I don't want to claim somebody's 60 if they're like 48.
Yeah, it's definitely not 48.
It's not. Sorry.
Look,
sorry, bro.
Look,
it's not like you competing in the Masters since you were 12.
The point being, he's got a vert ramp in his backyard, being a grandfather, which is awesome. That's the point.
Yeah, it's very true.
With him and Errol just the other day, and it was amazing out in Windsor. He's got a vert ramp in his backyard.
I'm just stoked to hear that Tom's skating and really enjoying it. And I think there's something in it when you kind of look inside yourself a little bit. You change little factors of your life. As long as you got that core in skateboarding, it just makes skateboarding better, I think. Like you've made some life changes recently, which are
for the worse, very likely.
But anyway, look, more about Tom, less about us. Mate, thank you so much for being on the show. Such a pleasure. Thanks for devoting this time. And let's catch up again soon. And we'll keep following. Let's keep following your journey and like where it leads. And, like maybe put on a contest or something like that, Tom. How about that?
That'd be cool, man. Yeah.
How about a vert contest?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You got to come down for the Miranda opening.
I'll see what I can do.
Miranda, the big bowl, we're just gonna have. Yeah, there's something gonna go on for that. So
Yeah. I wish I had some merch to give you. We need to get some merch.
I'd like some merch.
I'd like some merch too. You want to pay for it?
No, thanks.
All right, Tom. Thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, let's catch up really soon.
And skate.